Let's pick up today and chit-chatty about the election of 1876, which is kind of a strange situation. Move these things out of the way here. You never know when you're going to need this thing, but for right now. So, if there's anything from the last section of notes that you guys missed about the Republican strategy of campaigning with the waving the bloody shirt, or the Democrats' honest, upstanding campaign and use of the Ku Klux Klan to make sure that voting was done correctly, put in air quotes, you can refer back to the last lesson. The election of 1876, in many ways, really should be something that I think more of us take into consideration. It is a strange series of events. But let's start with something that really should not be strange. The election had the highest voter turnout in American history. 81% of registered voters came out to vote. And this is back in the day when you actually had to be there in person on voting day to vote in person. Unlike today when we offer any number of, mail-in options or, early voting or whatever else, the average election turnout in modern elections usually runs in the mid 50%. Now, uh, 2020, I think, was unusual. It was nearly 70% vote, but it's still not 81%. When all the votes were counted, and remember they had to be counted by hand, they didn't have machines to do it back then, Samuel Tilden had won the election by approximately 200,000 votes. That's about 3%. So keep in mind that is 38 states at that point in time. That works out to be roughly about 5,000 votes per state. That's not a lot. I mean, that's less than the population of, a normal sized small town in Wisconsin. The other problem with this election is that both the Republicans and the Democrats were engaged in some major voting fraud. One example, the state of Oregon voted for Samuel Tilden. Now, when the votes were kind of broken down, the the state of Oregon voted for Tilden because of one county. That one county voted primarily Democrat. The governor of Oregon, who was Republican, determined that there were irregularities in that county, so he threw out the entire county's votes and gave the state to Hayes. Now, not to be outdone, the entire South voted for Tilden, which was possible, but the fact that the bigots and bedsheets were all at the voting places making sure that only the right people voted pretty much discounts the legitimacy of the entire South's vote. And this is sort of where we end up here. Oh, and by the way, just to make the wackiness even, more pronounced, the state of Wyoming allowed women to vote. They were the first state to do so, so you had women folk voting. It was just like, nuts. When all was said and done, Tilden's victory in the popular vote didn't count or didn't matter. Because remember, and we'll go over this more in the coming days, we are not a democracy. We are a republic. When you vote for president, you are not actually voting for the candidate. You are voting for a representative who will cast a ballot on your behalf. That representative you are voting for is called an elector because you need to win what is referred to as the Electoral College. In 1876, and in order to properly win the Electoral College, you need one more than half of the vote total. So in 1876, there were and 69 electors. In order to win, you had to get 185. When the electoral votes were done being distributed, Samuel Tilden has 184. He is one vote short of winning, even though he won the popular vote. Rutherford B. Hayes has 165. He is 20 votes short. At issue are 20 electoral votes that have not been assigned from the states of Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. Now, yes, these are all southern states. They all voted Democrat. They all voted for Tilden. But here's the thing. The Republicans controlled the state governments. And to be fair about this, they have a legitimate argument in saying, with the KKK at all the voting places, we can't really say whether or not everybody was allowed to vote. And the votes were so close in these states that it may have made a huge difference if blacks and Republicans had actually voted in those elections, which, with the KKK being at the polling place, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they probably didn't. Now, if you guys can remember back to Constitution 101 from last year, and excuse me while I enjoy some Dr. Pepper here, my beverage of choice. If there is no clear winner in the Electoral College, and by clear winner, that means that you must have over half. You need definitively over. The election goes to the House of Representatives, with each state receiving one vote. Not each representative getting a vote, each state getting a vote. Now, there's a lot of problems throwing this election to the House, largely because of the way that Reconstruction is working. The states couldn't exactly vote properly because some of them weren't even back technically in yet because of the way Reconstruction was. So, the House decided to sort of punt the issue, which is hard to do when it's a disputed election. And they are going to set up a committee. This committee will be made up of 15 people because you have to have an odd number. 7 are going to be Republicans who are all going to vote for Hayes. You know that. 7 are going to be Democrats who are all going to vote for Tilden. You already know that too. So it comes down to one independent, literally a guy with no political party affiliation, a Supreme Court judge. He will be the deciding vote for all 20 of these disputed votes. Now, attempting to jump ahead of themselves a little bit and to help their case, the Democrats use a constitutional, I want to say loophole because it's not a loophole. They use a constitutional rule to their advantage. Prior to 1913 and the adoption of the 17th Amendment, all senators were appointed by the states. They were not elected by the people of the states. They were appointed. There happened to be a vacancy in the Senate for the state of Illinois. The Supreme Court judge just happened to be from Illinois. And the Democrats just happened to be in charge of the state Senate in Illinois, and they chose the new senator to be that independent Supreme Court judge who was now seated as the Democratic senator from the state of Illinois. what the Democrats did not expect was that this judge was so honest and had so much integrity that he said that he could no longer be objective or independent in this decision because of his new position, and so he withdrew from the committee. The House of Representatives, then again, remember being controlled by Republicans, defaulted to appointing a Republican to fill this now vacated seat, a Republican who is going to be objective and evaluate everything based on logic and criteria and look at reality and facts. And lo and behold, all 20 votes are given to Hayes in a vote of 8-7 for every single vote, resulting in Hayes winning the presidency and becoming the 19th president. Now, one might ask, why would the Democrats go along with this? Because, they had enough pull to get the Supreme Court judge made Senate. Why didn't they do something else? Well, here's where, if you guys remember from last year, for those of you who were here, here's where this thing gets a little bit sus. The ballots had to be hand counted. We've already talked about that. There was no way of making this any easier. The election occurred the first week in November. The vote counts were now all in finally, but we're looking at January or February of 1877. We are now a good 2 to 3 months past the election. And not only are we past the election, but we are rapidly approaching March, when the new president will be sworn in. Both Republicans and Democrats threaten to drag the election out unless they get their way. The Republicans need to get this done because the Democrats are soon going to control the House of Representatives. And if this draws out long enough, they will figure out a way to change how the determination for president will go. The Democrats need to get this done because the longer this drags out, the more difficult it will be for them as a party to get things working. And both sides realize that the way that the Constitution is structured, that until they figure something out, Ulysses S. Grant will remain president. Ain't nobody got time for that. So while the rank and file members of Congress and the various branches of government are arguing with each other as Democrat and Republican, the leaders of the two parties, not the normal members, the people who are in charge of the parties, get together for a private dinner at a hotel in New York. And after a really expensive dinner, which I'm pretty sure the taxpayers paid for, they move themselves off quietly to a private room where they discuss how to solve the problem of the election. This is what is referred to as the Compromise of 1877. Now remember, a compromise is an agreement where you get something you want, the other guy gets something that he wants, but neither of you get everything that you want. And quite frankly, some things aren't the way that you would have liked, but you just kind of put up with it. The Republicans get Rutherford B. Hayes elected. So they get the presidency. So what do the Democrats get? The Democrats get a lot more out of this than the Republicans do. The Republicans agreed to pull out all the troops from the southern states. Even if those states had not cooperated with the Reconstruction plan, didn't matter. They were going to pull everybody out. Additionally, despite what the 14th Amendment said, the Republicans agreed to send money to the South to rebuild it, and they will put a transcontinental railroad line through a southern city. And even though I don't have this listed here, the third part of what the Republicans sort of are willing to give up is that they will appoint a Democrat to Hayes's cabinet. So what the Republicans essentially agree to do is end Reconstruction. Now, I need to be very clear about this. This agreement is completely 100% secret. Rutherford B. Hayes has no idea what is going on. Neither does Samuel Tilden, let alone any of the members of Congress or any local government officials or anything else. When Hayes is awarded all 20 votes and declared the winner, for all intents and purposes, it looks like the election was fixed and they cheated. Hayes may win the presidency, but the Democrats are really the ones who gain big time with what is known as the Compromise of 1877, because the Republicans essentially end Reconstruction completely. That's what they agree to, in exchange for just Hayes being allowed to win. Hayes doesn't know this agreement happened, so his presidency is overshadowed by the belief that he cheated and stole the election. The Democrats do not know that this happened, so they fully believe that Hayes cheated and stole the election. Heck, some of the Republicans themselves believe that Hayes cheated and won the election because they didn't know about all the secret squirrel stuff going on. But with the election of Rutherford B. Hayes in the informal Compromise of 1877, Reconstruction is officially ended. Now, just one other quick point here. Why do we know about all this stuff if it was so secret? Because the men who helped to negotiate this and agree to the deal published their memoirs well after they retired just to prove how smart they had been in what they did. And people found out the circumstances involved. Okay, well, we'll pick this up later with the end of the fair as well as the long-term effects of the end of Reconstruction. And that's it for right now. Peace and love.